On today's episode of All Chill, No Shill, we're going to be talking with the fine artist behind the original frogs, Dee Dee. We're going to get into the story behind frogs and how they came to be. I hope you enjoy.
So before starting with NFTs, I was obsessed with all over paintings and mainly with modern art. So that's what I've studied as well with Museum of Modern Art. I graduated in a couple of courses, and that led me to study many modern artworks. And I was really into the action paintings and the expressionism, and more of the fact how paintings and art was made rather than what it would look like or what the subject would be. After that, I spent probably years and most of my conscious time thinking what would be after abstraction or beyond abstraction, or what would come next, or what would be that style that would be not visible, not known, and not researched and not developed. And it was really, really buggering me because I couldn't come up with that. And I just couldn't understand and just couldn't really find a word for it. And I think I now did. And I think that this is collaborative art. This is the dynamic art that we are doing now with NFTs. And I'll tell you how I came up to that. So when we first started Frogland, I originally created the concept artwork for the frogs. They were much more childish and basic. They didn't really look nothing like they do now. So when we met shrimp and bugs, it was really exciting for me because I just wanted to see how this art could evolve. And this is really the most exciting thing about creativeness into this project is the fact that those two experienced individuals took my concept art and transformed it into what it is now. I just can't even explain with words. I know how satisfying of a feeling that is, because to me, art should be dynamic, should be changed, should evolve and upgrade and become better rather than being still picture or as photography is. That's what photography is for, to memorize and document a time and a place or a subject, but art should evolve, in my opinion. So yeah, that is really the most exciting thing for me into the NFT world and in general into Frogland.
So I came from a photography background. I basically used my camera as like an all access pass to things. So if I was interested in something, I'd find a way to shoot it and then get behind scenes, talk with people, whatever. But yeah, it always was definitely in that documentary style. And it wasn't even until I met my wife that I really started doing photography that felt like more art, because she brought the side of fashion and then we could do like levitations. So it still wasn't like conceptual. Like there wasn't a message in a lot of my photography work. I like got to a point I was like, okay, I can spend 8 hours in Photoshop to make it look like I've not touched something. I didn't go into photography so that I would spend all of my time behind the computer. Pictorialism and then expressionism, and just seeing even in the history of photography how that's gone back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, I find it very exciting when now with that new style of art and people can just improve it and change it all the time. And now you can even change the metadata of the NFTs. And you could even have originally started with one and then end up with another. Which is the fun of it, I think.
Oh, I agree. There was a handful of people that started to look at photographs that changed through the seasons, or pieces that do kind of evolve from one piece to another or degrade each time it's sold. What was some stuff for you that was like in the NFTs that you particularly enjoyed or like found interesting?
These are things that haven't happened yet.
Okay.
I must say. However, I think the dynamic NFTs are just coming into market, and That's where the very exciting stuff will be, in my opinion. So, for example, news that could be changed every day and be updated, or, as you said, seasons, or anything that can grow old or grow differently with time. There must be another dimension in order to include, that it will change the character of the original art. I haven't seen many of those artworks yet, but they're yet still to come. So I'm very excited about it. I'm a believer. I'm a believer that would happen soon.
Yeah, I'm definitely a long-term. Like, I think it's going to be I think it's the inevitable integration of tech into the art world. Like, it's been happening, digital art, we always move with technology, but I feel like there's a skill set of coding that, for a lot of the concepts that I find interesting, the limitation for me personally is a lack of coding skills. And so, like, the co-creation side of it, that's what I find is really cool, is like to your point, you can come up with a concept and then it can get worked through alternative programs, alternative technologies that like are too broad for one single person to understand. In the light art world, I feel like anybody that's doing anything innovative, like, they have a whole studio to like pull from, because that's, almost what it takes. Like, it's hard to be doing the physical labor on something that's like thousands of parts and then also be doing the like conceptual labor of like coding things. And like, yeah, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I also think that it's very important, the fact that nowadays with NFT projects and in art projects in general, there's more than one or two individuals working together, and those individuals differently and, of course, highly skilled, but every one of them could do different things. So you don't particularly need to code yourself. If you are a visual artist, you can just collaborate with someone who could do that. So it's very rewarding when a group of people get together with a common idea, with something they would like to create, and they actually manage to do it because of everyone's skills.
Yeah. I think it's wonderful. I think it's healthier too, honestly. Montana doesn't have I know that I have a lack of experience with collaboration, partially because we don't have, like, if I was in LA, whatever, be able to put together a production. Here, it can be really challenging, and you don't necessarily know the skill level of somebody. So you definitely end up spending a lot of time, like, I've got this new connection. They live far enough away that I don't like interact with them normally. You don't know, like, if you do all of your own work, I know that you can do X, Y, and Z to a certain level. But like, if you work on productions, I don't know if that's because like your skill was employed or somebody in the production, did the editing or did whatever. So I've been really excited to, like, I knew collaboration was something that I wanted to get better at coming into this, which is probably why I didn't go for like the one of one artist direction, because I was like, I miss community, especially with COVID and everything. And then being like geographically isolated, I was like, I miss people. I don't have more than one or two friends to even reach out to chat, like art or specifics or the business of art. And I went to business school, so I don't necessarily always know how to talk with somebody that has like gone through like traditional art training or like traditional art school. I think it was better through COVID because I actually did some studying, but yeah, it's definitely like I don't know how to like open the door for a collaboration, stuff like that. Whereas like Frogland has been a really nice, learning ecosystem to play around with that.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. I come from a world where I was a traditional artist. I didn't have many artist friends and people to talk to. I also graduated in finance, so I didn't know how to start an art conversation with someone who's been art educated. But once you kind of feel more confident about it, then you realize there's nothing scary about it. So the way it worked for me, and I think that's why career change is important for everyone, and I recommend it to everyone from the standpoint of view of increasing confidence. Mm-hmm. So when you study and graduate into something, everyone around you expects you to be good at it. This is to be your career, to kind of do really well. But when you decide to change your career after with something that you haven't studied, you just feel that it's only you and your confidence. There's no knowledge behind. There's just really that will and wish to create something and to do something with your life. So I think that's a major advantage to all of the second careers that people choose to do. When I realized I was a little bit shy from the fact that I haven't studied art, but I've studied finance, there were a few years past when I signed up for Museum of Modern Art online courses, and I did few of them to a point where I started feeling confident about it. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't about the knowledge that I've gained. Maybe it was, I don't know, but it was more about those hot words that you would learn to speak about and makes you understand what you actually like about it. So, in that regard, if you ever wanted to talk art or anything else, you can always call.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. It's there's part of me that would love to, like, I did my US travel when I was younger, and I was like dead set on like, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to fulfill this like image and idea I had with photography. And most of it was just like, oh, nobody in my state makes a living doing creative work. So like that was part of it. I want to make a living doing, my creative work. And I think you get to a point whenever you're doing that you're like, oh, okay, I'm a working artist, but I'm not making necessarily the art that like the art that I make is doing something for somebody else that it's no longer doing for me. I figured out what being unintentionally derivative meant, and that kind of clicked for me, because before that I was like, no, I don't want to like look at other like works, stuff like that, because I don't want to be influenced, and I don't want to end up copying them. I started out doing photorealism painting and then got a camera, and I realized like, oh, I've got to learn how to market art or market myself. And now that I look back at it, a lot of the photorealism stuff, I'm like, I think I understand where the attraction to it comes from. Because if I haven't been trained in a broad range of things, I'm going to really be engaged with the improvement that happens when you're doing like technically precise work, because it feels very like concrete. It's very understandable. It's very like, this one is closer to the reference than the last one. And it's such a jump to move past that. I have a whole new admiration for the finer or like greater arts world because I did that.
Absolutely. I totally relate to that. First of all, wanted to say that the untrained part of obviously part of your life and mine, it brings the originality of your art. So I always kind of try to think of it as an advantage, not being mentored by anybody else. However, studying art really helps, as you described it, understand the techniques and really putting more words into those actions, what are they actually made of and how they're made of. So it does help. Although we both have thought that this could be, this could come between us and our originality, it actually helped us to discover what your originality is about. So totally relate with you about this one.
Yeah, I definitely think diving into it, I think if I've learned anything there, if you can go into it genuinely curious, you will find things that you absolutely either identify with or attach with in almost every industry. And I think a lot of the times, like, our assumptions going into it is what keeps us from finding something interesting.
Absolutely. Yes, it's also very important to mention that not only in times of being stuck as an artistic creative, but sometimes just as a reminder, from my experience, I found it's super useful and important to go back to your earlier works, as you mentioned earlier. And the reason behind it is because every artist, in my opinion, of course, has come to realization of liking certain things, certain ideas and concepts. And during their lifetime, they do try to rediscover and to come up to a different conclusion, perhaps, or a different variation of that concept, but the original concept is always the same. Yeah. And you can easily see that if you were to go back to your artworks made 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, depends how young you are, and you would sense that same idea, even if it was a tiny little bit of it, you could still recognize it. You would know that this is what you're trying to convey. You immediately know it. So that's what is really fascinating about art, is that it just kind of brings us to our divine sense, or something divine, although this is in no sense connected to God. We just don't understand it, and that's what most interesting thing about it is, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Do you ever end up journaling?
This is one of the things I do. There's a book that I swear by. It's the author is Julia Cameron, and the book's name is The Artist's Way. And this book is kind of a book for a self-book, I think it's called, or a book for self-helping for artists. I'm not sure exactly. But there are two major points in that book. The first one is to do morning pages. And this is connected with the fact that if you were to have some boring stuff to do during the day, then you just put it on paper, which leaves all of your day being creative. Otherwise, you're just going to keep on thinking about things that are not as creative. They're just daily routines, which I really believe in. So you hardly see me with no notebook. I always have a notebook, and I write on different pages, so I can never find where I've written something.
Oh my God, I can relate to that. I get composition science books, so they're like graph paper.
All right. Do you draw in them as well?
Well, so I'll draw, but so I'm dyslexic, so my handwriting is like, it's horribly spaced, and it's like, there's a weird spatial issue I run into with words. And so having actual graph paper where it's like, it gives me like horizontal dividers, like I can try to put one letter in each box, and that kind of gets me closer to having something that's like legible. But it gives me the ability to use scale really quickly. So like if I'm thinking of like a small idea, I can think like one box is 1 inch or one box is 1 foot. And then I can get a drawing fairly quickly for like translating and putting it in my head at scale. But yeah, it's just, I really struggle with like I know I'm in a bad place if I start to journal, because I'll have like whole journals that have like 5 pages in them, but they were just from that side of like, oh God, I've got to journal or do something. I've got to write. And it's funny because I'll find them in like old boxes of stuff, and like they all say like a similar variation of the same exact thing. And yeah, even though it'll be like, oh yeah, that was 5 years ago. And I thought it was the first time I was ever encountering that problem, but it's totally just me looping back to X, Y, or Z. And it's insane. I think a lot of it is tied to seasons.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's meant to remind us of those times and the fact that every time we start a journal, we know it's going to help, and we know that this is one of the ways that we'll get unblocked. It's already a good idea. So even if it's a one-pager notebook, it is worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second thing that I wanted to mention about that really interesting book that I swear by is called The Artist's Date. And it's what basically means is that you, not you, but every creative should have a date with their artist child, or whenever they were children or younger age and they had like a passion of doing, let's say mine was to do collages and just cut out little pieces of magazines and then just put them together in an unrelated way. Everyone must have had something as youngsters that they've enjoyed doing. Yeah. So it's important that you get connected to that artist child in yourself in order to kind of provoke your creativity. That would obviously lead to completely something else. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll go and make a really cool collage.
Yeah, but it allows you to remember. It allows you to get out of that side of like, oh, this isn't art or this is art, but like go back to prior to having anybody's judgments of like what you should do. Like I know I work myself back from like huge ideas to like, okay, how do I get more practical? And then once I'm comfortable, I go like, I do a big jump back to like a huge idea. And it's not necessarily like, sometimes they work, sometimes they get through, but I get way more excited about thinking of those like big ideas. And a lot of times that same thinking trickles into like the work that I end up doing in a more practical sense.
Yeah.
So have you gotten to see much light art or like light art installations?
Yes, I have. I find them very fascinating, especially when I don't understand what it shows, when it's something really abstract that I haven't seen before. I visit museums quite often. Light art show I was witness of was a big, a really huge room where everything was very dark and the light was, I don't even know where it was coming from. That's where it was so interesting, because it was projected on the walls as in a 4-dimensional way, a safari picture. Or rather, safari atmosphere was seen. So you just start to feel like you're there, and you're physically there as you are. However, it's just the scene is not there in reality. So it's slightly confusing. It's a strange feeling, I must say, but it's a nice feeling. This is what I saw at CES in Vegas the beginning of this year.
Yeah, tell me more with this. I'm interested to see your take on tech. I was very jealous that you guys got to go to that. I need to just start making those a trip.
So that was really the most interesting thing I saw. I was really fascinated by the feelings and the experience itself. That I get to be there for. The other very interesting thing to me were the robotic cars, or there were some really futuristic cars that looked like they could fly. They couldn't, but it was absolutely fascinating how they were built. I really don't know. I can't explain it, but it was fascinating to see. There was a lot of tech that was connected with virtual reality and tech that was meant to make you feel as you are somewhere else or someone else, which was really interesting.
I'm sure you have a few conversations about VR in your household. What's your particular take? Like, how do you feel about VR?
I must say I love VR, otherwise I'll be in trouble. However, VR is just one of those one of those feelings where it's not real, but it makes you feel real. And the most interesting aspect of it is creating art in VR. And it's fascinating. The way it works is that you create those. You could create anything as a sculpture or as a two-dimensional picture, and then you can walk through it, and it just gives you that sense of, oh God, is that real? I just made that. It must be real, but then it can't be because you can go through it. So it's very confusing. To the brain, to the concept of art in my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you take it like, so I feel like VR for me is a reverse. It's like all of a sudden everything makes so much sense to me. So like in our world, there's no scale. Because not in our world, like the real world has scale, but like everything that we consume has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller to fit onto, a phone screen. We have, giant desktops, stuff like this, but they're still all like really warped perspectives. And then in VR, you can step in there and actually feel the scale of like something that's taller than you. And I was like, this is what, like, I can't wait till we have like real world representations of galleries, like to that level where you walk into it and it feels real. One, from the selfish side of like, then I won't feel so like removed from everything because, it takes a flight and like a day and a half to get anywhere. But just in the sense of like, I would love to be able to see so many things that I see them represented on my phone. And then you see them in person or you experience something and there's just no, comparison, like a 10x difference, 100x difference. It's not even in that scale. It's just a completely lost experience as soon as you're not there physically. And I feel like that's why art lovers or like people that go out and seek art really love it, is because they have an experience that you truly cannot get unless you are there in person. And the best you can take away is just a kind of a sad representation. At least we have something, because like,
Really? Yeah.
For a long time it was hard. You had to mail it and, but yeah, I think the exposure to art through VR for the general public, I think it will be a much bigger jump than art through the internet, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah, because it just brings a feeling into you, which just normal screens and traditional education cannot do.
Yeah.
When you do feel even slightly that you are there, it's completely different perception of whatever it is. Mm-hmm. That's why I think it would be a major component into younger children education, not only with geography and places where they could be, but with art in general. To explore artworks, they wouldn't be able to go and see directly. It's still not exactly the same experience as being in front of it. However, it's so much closer to it rather than just not see it at all or see it in the book or screen. So absolutely, I am a believer it'll be part of our future in a very big scale. Mm-hmm. Especially for the younger generations. It should help them to imagine and learn and explore the world better as we used to.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that.
We're going to take a quick break and we're going to be right back into the show talking about some traditional local things we do.
And in my little town, when I was younger, we haven't done it the last few years, but we used to get the entire town together and do like a giant pig roast.
Yeah, we still do that in Bulgaria.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's cool about smaller countries. what is cool about it is the sense of community, and people are closer to each other. As in smaller towns, many people kind of get to know each other. It's inevitable. So, for example, now for Easter, it was a very cool experience, although we are not religious. The tradition for Easter is to go to church at midnight, and we normally paint eggs, and then we crack the eggs at midnight. And this is all happening in front of the church, no matter if you're a believer or not.
Yeah.
And it's more about seeing your friends and just go and do it for the tradition and just for the sense of belonging to a community. And it was actually really beautiful. I haven't seen that in bigger countries that I've been to, only to smaller places like here.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting too, because so my family basically came over early 1800s, kind of fled the country, it was rough times, and then came over, mined, but it have not like spread out very much. So my aunt is like our family historian. And so she's got everything back to like when they came over to America. And then 23andMe, I actually like got to talk, I think it was a couple years ago, a little more with somebody that was looking into the family history from the Serbian side. And what blew me away is like the church has all the marriage records, has all the documents. Like the church is essentially like the public office here, where like public records would be stored and stuff like that. And it's not like you're not going back to the government to see like, where this history is. You're actually going back to like the churches themselves, which is kind of just mind-boggling. But
it really is, and I think it comes from the fact that in olden days there were most of the people were more religious than we are nowadays, and all the marriages, all the births, and everything was going through the church. It just had to, so that's why they do have a record of everything happening in the past. So it's a very similar story here too.
Yeah,
Serbia is on the door, so I believe that both nations are kind of maybe inspired in a way of each other and have things in common, as it just so geographically close. I don't know if you know, but Eastern Europe is very, very different from the part of the Western countries. There are a lot of that spiritual alive that is lacking elsewhere, as well as superstitious and different weird traditions that I haven't seen or heard in anywhere else. So I again think that as an advantage, because when I travel, I just find everything fascinating as it is new to me. Not probably anymore that much, but when I first started traveling when I was much younger, it was it was absolutely interesting to me to meet other cultures and just to explore their traditions and history, because it's just totally different. But that's what I think that connects people, when you kind of get to know or slightly or even want to know their culture and where they come from.
Yeah, and I feel like I always feel stuck in the middle of things because like I can understand and empathize a lot of sides, not necessarily because I've traveled a ton, but because like I just have I had divorced parents, so I ended up with like weirdly like families in completely different regions, if that makes sense. And so they weren't always on the same sides of things, and so like you would end like just being able to empathize with people whose perspective is not your own, or like going in and having that curiosity to like, oh, I wonder, because like most people are not inherently bad or not intending to be bad. At least I like to think that most people would help somebody in need. Like, and I know in cities it's a little bit more difficult to find maybe, but like in rural areas, like you do rely, like if you were in a bad situation, you would be, you understand you would be relying on somebody else to like save you or like help you. Like people get stuck, you get, like there's just things that happen in day-to-day life that don't really happen in the city. And so like just that community of like knowing that, oh, I don't know you that well, but like I have no problem stopping and like giving you a ride into town or whatever. There's just that community of like, yeah, you're here and that's enough that you're part of it. Like you're in the area, so like you're part of that community. There's something about growing up in smaller areas or like, having both experiences that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think it enriches your culture when you just experience totally different environments like that. Being in the States, when we were going to NFT NYC and all the events around NFTs in Los Angeles and in Miami, it was an experience I'll never forget, especially the people that we met there. Wanted to mention Brainpasta, as he's one individual that is probably the first person we would see every time we go somewhere and the last person we see that when we leave that place. But there's something about him. It's his vibe. It's his agenda that is just so attractive to any creative person. He's a good friend and he's a truly inspirational artist and a person. The other people that we've met and truly enjoyed being around, one of them is Gabe Wise. Yeah. He's a really good friend and he's very funny. We had so many fun stories with him that it's hard that I couldn't manage to meet him at the last NFT LA group of events. Also, Elizabeth is a very, very kind creature. He's a beautiful soul as well. So I truly miss all of those wonderful people that we met so far, and I hope that I would meet them again next year when I could travel freely again. Yeah.
So I think because I got into Frogland, I was late enough to not, like Gabe would have already been pretty established, which is weird to say because I'm sure that it's not a long time horizon, but Gabe was already pretty established. I'd already seen a lot of Ollie stuff, but I didn't I didn't know there was an attachment or like friendships behind the scenes with you guys. And so I'd kind of put them in like a class of like not necessarily an older class, but maybe that's the right way to do it. Like they were kind of established already before I even like really got into like thinking about what I wanted to do with NFTs. And I'm always curious to hear about those early days because I think a lot of those relationships get established and those stories, I don't know if it's that they get lost or forgotten or they seem untangible like after the fact because they're mostly communicated through like not people that were there or like not people that, knew them very well.
Well, from my experience, this was the most valuable thing that happened in the NFT world. It didn't matter as much as all the sales and anything else as the connections I've made through it. And of course, people who we don't talk to every day they wouldn't know that. We don't show it on an everyday basis, but the connections and the friendships we've made through that time, and it's not even that long time, that was only last year that we started traveling to mainly visit the Bright Moments Gallery in Venice Beach in Los Angeles. And that's where we start meeting all those creatives. I've met Z Novak, and she's absolutely stunning creature that I would spend any time with. it's absolutely beautiful to meet other like-minded people who are into this, to create and build and just evolve as personalities and as an artist, and as being part of this revolution that we all kind of wanted to achieve. It's really the best thing of it all. I must mention everyone from the Frogland team. The only person that I haven't met in person is Damien or Bugs. And I can't wait.
Oh, I'm excited to meet Bugs.
Me too. But everyone else from the team that I've met personally has left I have a peace in my heart for all of them. The fact that we have spoken so long on Zoom and on the phone before we met each other had nothing to do with the fact that we met in person. It was such an experience. It was like meeting somebody that you've always been a fan of, or it was astonishing. I absolutely loved it. When I met and Shrimp and Matt and Lollihops, Don Love, who joined us in Miami, that's where I met him for the first time. It was really, really good fun. I'll never forget those days. And these are times that are worth living for. No matter what we managed to achieve with Frogland, although every one of us is doing really their best to build everything that we ever wanted. So now we can. And so I hope everyone else would enjoy that time with us. However, all these friendships that we've made are long lasting. And no matter anything else, it was worth, only because of that.
Yeah. If I'm guessing right, Bulgaria is probably like pretty cold in the winter.
Yeah.
Pretty warm, freezing. Like hot summers, cold winters, like really truly has the different seasons.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're kind of in a similar like climate then I think. Winter, especially as a creative, like in the northern climates, like summer season is like you have to get everything done in summer because like the whole state just kind of like the whole area is just like very much slower in the winter, and it's, you know, dark as soon as you come, like you go to work in the dark and you come home from work in the dark, there's not as much light. It's just a lot more like depressing. Seasonal depression is definitely a thing. This was the first year like Frogland and being able to be active in the Discord and like working on creative stuff and talking with the same people every day was the best thing in 30 years that I've found to combat like seasonal depression. Like winter sports are fantastic, but they're mostly like weekend things. And this was like the first time of like being really into something through a winter that was like, oh man, this is like keeping my brain engaged. I'm not getting sucked into the like longness of winter.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like all the pandemic felt like one really long winter. However, if it was not for the NFT world, it would have been so much sadder and miserable and depressing.
Yeah.
So I could only be grateful for what has happened, not only to Frogland, but to the space itself, that it managed to unite everyone in such hard times around the world. So I could only see a positive out of it for everyone.
Yeah, and I think even with the downturn, I think the downturn will end up, from talking to people, it feels like there was a group of people towards the beginning. And I think through a few of the founders, I've realized like, oh, I was still in the listening, lurking area, probably in the same rooms that they were on Clubhouse. They were just actively talking at that point, and I was still at the point of like, oh yeah, I'm working on my shop and just listening as like a thing to have on in the background. And I feel like there was definitely a community there, and the people that I look to that I still follow, that really got into NFTs on a good footing, a lot of them have ties back to that time. And I think that anytime that, like I know in the Discord, like when Frogland was like lower than mint for a while, that was the like strengthening point or like the bonding point where like everybody that was there was like there forever. So we were like, screw it, we don't care about the floor. Like we're focused on like building our characters out, making stories with each other, and like really doing that co-creating. And I think that that's like in the hype, like when the market goes really crazy, you end up that kind of like fragments, and then it can come back, if that makes sense. Like I think you come back to your home base.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. It means the world to hear it. Just want to say that everything started from Clubhouse, and everything started from the room about nothing, which was hosted by Snacks and Rare Pizzas, and that's where we met everyone else on the team. So I was just invited on Clubhouse, can't even remember why or who, but this was the first room I was ever in, and hearing about the Rare Pizza project made me want to be part of it. So I offered my help, and I ended up doing the pesto sauce for
awesome.
for this. Yeah, and getting to know all of the people in the project made us really wanted to work with them and do something else as well. So everything leads to something else, and that co-creation is really in the core of everything. I think it lies in every person to be able to create something with someone else. Before, in traditional arts, it's very difficult to achieve that. Most creatives are, excuse me, lonely for the fact that very few collaboration exists, and it's not easy to collaborate with other creatives because of so many different reasons. So now suddenly we have that opportunity to do stuff together, and no one wants to miss it.
No.
So yeah, it's just really the best feeling ever.
I love it. So what do you feel optimistic about in the next year?
About everything. Trying to always see the bright side of life. I'm really excited about obviously the tadpole we're expecting. So that's going to be
army.
It's going to be one of the little tadpoles in Frogland. So I'm super excited about this, and I hope to unite the other little tadpoles as well, because ours is not going to be the first one. But everything connected with Frogland, as this is my life now, and it will be, is on the agenda. I can't wait to see more people involved and work together and create all sorts of content, as you do, everyone to find their own niche that they enjoy being part of. And if we could just connect all of those points and people and just be part of this one big creative circle, then what else would you like to happen? I mean, this is really one of the most satisfying things.
Yeah, I feel like it's like in a weird way, it's a dream that I feel like so many artists have, because no matter how many times it's flipped over for me, I always bounce between, I can't do what I want to do alone, and then building, and like my trust issues and like my lack of collaboration probably comes out of just like fear of like letting go of things. Because in a lot of circumstances, it's like, I can't do this on my own. You get a couple of people involved, and then before you can get through those like rough beginning periods, like things either fall apart or like relationships change. Just like there's always so much variability in life that it's really hard to get a group of people behind something long term. And
Yeah.
that's been one of the amazing things to see with this is like, oh wow, it's just like, it feels like a month, and it's like getting close to a year.
I know.
And it's still like, that's what I love too, is like we've added people, but like when I think about it, like there is not that many people that were in that core like first group that have left. Like,
I know.
Team wise and community wise.
Yeah. Well, that's why probably we feel so close to each other, because it feels like it's been years, and it's only been not even 1 year. It will be in September. It's crazy how time flies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, is there anything that you would like to add?
I don't know if I have managed to. I really wanted to emphasize on our team because I really love every single one of them. And I'm so grateful that everyone is putting their best efforts and time and themselves to be here. That it's just really, really awesome feeling that I wish everyone managed to experience one day. And it only happens when you surround yourself with positive and creative personalities. So I'm glad that you're here, because what you do is connecting all of us with the rest of the world and showing part of everyone that's probably not known to the rest of the community. So I hope that these podcasts manage to connect us more, even on a more personal level, with everyone else. So can't thank you enough for what you do. It's a really big deal for everyone. So thank you.
I'm gonna flip that back and thank you guys. But seriously, like I wish that we could have I wish that I would have gotten to know you earlier, because a lot of the things that I learned was not necessarily from a conversation with one of the people. It was from like seeing them interact with other people on the Discord. So that's kind of, my hope is that people can get that feeling of like, oh, these guys are amazing and they care. And that was what felt like it separated it from so many other projects, was like, not the founders are frantically telling us how much they care. They just, like, you can see by the things they do, the small choices, that they care. And that's like, I don't know. I guess it's the little things, just the things that make it feel different are not like things that like look good on a billboard. They're things that like have to be felt.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you see it that way. And thank you for recognizing it, because I mean, it's very easy to say that we all care, as everyone would, but you have sense that Frogland has taken out all of our lives. Every one of us has been in Frogland, more than in real life. And we have kind of put aside our real lives in order to be in Frogland. And but we want to do it. So we just really enjoy doing it. So I'm glad that you've sensed it the way it actually is.
And that's going to do it for this week's episode of All Chill, No Shill. Thank you, Dee Dee, for coming on, and everybody, we will catch you next week.